today. Thank you for the task that you have laid before us to serve these great students in which you have entrusted this network with. We pray that all decisions that we make will be in their best interest. And God, we pray that you will continue to lead and guide us, and also the administration that you have placed here with ETAA and the partnership between us and Longview ISD. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. On the Texas flag, I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one indivisible.
Just want to give an update about our summer academy. We have approximately 388, might want to say 390 students, and at both of our campuses, J.L. Everhart and Ware. Each of those campuses, this is so strange, has 194 students as of today in the attending the summer academy. And in comparison to other summer schools prior to the pandemic, that number would relatively be higher in terms of just focusing on the academic part, because previously when they had summer school, they did enrichment, and they had roughly about 400 kids, but many of those kids were there for enrichment. But these children are there only for closing the gap. So we're very satisfied with our numbers. Also, the East Texas Advanced Academies, CCC Law Enforcement Summer Academy is going on here at Forest Park. And from what I heard, everything, it was a good day today for our students. They'll be learning to learn about criminal and traffic laws, patrol procedures, traffic control accident. From what I understand, they're gonna have you do some type of forensic, and they're gonna set up a scene for the children. So we're very proud of our East Texas Advanced Academy CCC Law Enforcement Summer Academy. How many students do we have attending the academy?
The last check was, I think we're supposed to have 26.
26, and that exceeded our expectations. And these students who have expressed an interest in law enforcement in the future. I've asked Dr. Brown to come and share with the board under our either curriculum or Culture Conscious Campus report, give the board an update about IB. Any questions about the law enforcement, the summer academy? Yes.
I don't have a question, but I will say, I am personally appreciative to Dr. Wise for pushing this here at Forest Park, and I'm definitely grateful for the SRO that we have here at Forest Park in the person of Officer Jose Montalvo. He's the one that really also helped organize this camp, so I think that he deserves a great amount of kudos too.
Thank you, I agree. And come on, as you come, Mr. Brown, going back to our summer academy, our student assistants, we have partnered with Longview High School with their Ready, Set, Teach program. And we have 4 student assistants who have been assigned to master teachers. And they're there this summer school, trailing that teacher assistant and learning about what it is to be a teacher, and hopefully make a decision to choose this as a career and profession in the future. These are seniors, and they are being paid $10 an hour for their efforts. And so we're very, very excited about that program as well. First, please.
restrict your argument by trying to show that you're an authority or calling on some authority. And although I don't want to fall into that trap, I'm going to do it again. I've been associated with the IB for 15 years, and as an administrator in IB schools for 13 years. And so I know a little bit about the IB. My son was an IB teacher, my brother was an IB teacher, my daughter's an IB graduate. I am a strong believer and true believer in the tenets of the IB. And so, as I speak this evening, that's what I want you to take with you as I go through this, that I am absolutely a true believer in what the IB preaches, the IB philosophy, and the good in which the IB puts in children when it is truly done correctly. So let me just give you a little bit of background. I know that you're not experts on the IB, but I'm going to try to make you many experts in a very short time. Okay? International schools, for the most part, are independent schools. They answer to no one but themselves. So if I go to the International School of The Hague in Belgium, that school is going to have a director, it'll have a board, and they'll answer to no one but themselves. I go to the Cairo American School, it will answer to nobody but themselves. When I go to the International School in Jakarta, the Jakarta International School, it'll answer to no one but themselves. And so what was going on, if you look back 50 plus years, because the average time that an American diplomat and most diplomats in most countries stay in an individual place is about 2 to 3 years. So if I have students, if I have children, and I'm a diplomat, and I'm in Jakarta, and 3 years from now I'm in Cairo, and 2 years from now I'm in The Hague, and 2 years from then I'm in Lucerne, what happens to my kids is this. They get one curriculum here, they get another curriculum there, and every time they move, they got a different curriculum. And in 1963, a group of parents and administrators and businessmen in Switzerland started to look at this problem of their kids getting a different curriculum every single time they move. And in discussions between teachers, administrators, parents, diplomats, they came up with a system that would follow their kids from school to school, as international schools adopted that new system. So this happens in 1963. By 1965, other international schools are starting to adopt that model. So you have the beginning of what would become the IB in 1963. The first American school to adopt that system adopts it before the name even gets changed. But it is also a school that does not meet the regular way that usually things are done in the United States, and that's the United Nations International School in New York. Again, truly an international school. 2 to 225 countries represented in a single school in New York. But they adopt the IB for the same reason that those other international schools were adopting the IB. In 1968, they changed the name because the original name of the IB was the International, let me make sure I get it right. It was the International, It was the International Schools Examination Association. Basically, so it was built on exams. And it was only a curriculum for 11th and 12th grade. That's it. In 1968, they changed the name to the International Baccalaureate Organization. You get your first IB school in Texas in 1979. So what we have here is a start of a system to help kids who are moving from school to school. The system is not about curriculum. This is key. Because every place they go, they're gonna have to answer to something else. And probably one of the typical things to do among international schools is, if I know that I have a lot of American students, then what the school will usually do is, okay, there are 50 states in the United States, let's choose a state, and we'll follow their standards. The two states that are normally followed, now, Virginia, Texas, and over the last 10 to 15 years, the Common Core. But they had to have some uniformity. And most of them, when you go to most of what they call the Tier 1 international schools, they offer the IB. At least the DP of the IB, which is the first to be created. The DP is gauged to show rigor for kids so that when they go to American colleges, they're ready. What they found out after a few years of dealing with the DP is, the DP was so rigorous that if I don't prepare kids before they get to it, they won't be successful. So because of that, they create the MYP, the Middle Years Program, and the PYP, the Primary Years Program. And those two programs are supposed to prepare students for the rigors of the DP. Now, Texas gets its first IB school in 1979. In 1994, you have the creation of TIBS. In 2000, TIBS creates its first board of directors. Now, you have to understand what TIBS actually is. If you go around the world, you will find schools that have joined together regionally to share the IB philosophy. And so TIBS basically said, Texas is one of the fastest regions of the IB, and it still is. Right now, the fastest region of the IB is Texas.
Worldwide.
Worldwide. Now, you have to understand why that is. It's because there are not many new international schools out there. Okay? Now, are there new schools being built that are calling themselves American? Absolutely. But I can tell you that if I go to Egypt right now, there's probably about 20 American schools. Only 2 of them actually have American students in them. The others are all Egyptian students seeking an American curriculum and education so that they can come to American universities. And believe me, those 2 kinds of schools are amazingly different. If I have 500 American kids in a school, along with 500 Egyptian kids and 500 other country kids, 1,500 students in a school, but 500 of them are American, the atmosphere and the culture of that school is radically different than a school that has 1,500 Egyptians in it. So there's not many of those true first-tier international schools being built, not anymore. They have history. They're 50 years old, they're 60 years. In fact, the school in El Salvador is nearly 75 years old. And there are no others going to be built. So if I'm the IB and I'm going to grow, I have to grow with schools that are already established in countries that are ready to accept me in their public aid. And so right now, the United States is growing in the IB, and it's the fastest growing region. But even though it's the fastest growing region, there are about 5,500 IB schools around the world. Only 1,200 are in the United States. That means about 22% of IB schools are in the United States. So the question then becomes, how much is the IB going to change itself to satisfy 22%? And the answer is, yes, they're changing a little bit, but not much. Because not only are they still servicing that 22%, but they're also servicing that 73%. Now, right now, the best IB school in the state of Texas is Meridian. down in Round Rock. It is a completely independent school, but it is a public charter. And on a daily basis, schools that are attempting to do the IB correctly, or as with fidelity, as much fidelity as possible, send people to Meridian to see how it works.
And we visited
And
Meridian.
we visited
Two years ago?
2 years ago. In fact, it is not the only time that people from Longview have gone down there. But when you sit in the room with them, one of the first things that happens is the director of that school says, "We love the fact that you guys all come down here. We love it. We love to show what we do. We love to put our product out there." He goes, "But I'm going to tell you right up front, you can't do what we do." And the reason we can't do what they do is because when he sits down with his elementary principal, his middle school principal, his high school principal, and they make a decision in the room, it's literally, right, just them. They answer to no one else. Now, do they take stock? Yes, they take stock, but they do it voluntarily. If they decided tomorrow that they didn't want their kids to have to take stock, they stop. So why that long lead up? Because the IB realizes that every school is different. Because Meridian has a different set of things that they deal with than Everhart and Forest Park, and Grandlet, and South Ward, where those schools deal with things that schools in Egypt and Singapore and Japan don't deal with. And one of the main things we have to deal with in the state of Texas is no matter what goes on, we must answer to the TEKS. So any school, public school in the state of Texas, although they decide that they will go with the IB, it is going to be a hybrid of the IB and whatever standards you're going after. Now here's the key. Who determines who becomes IB schools? In Texas, we have a very, very strong regional group. TIBS is considered one of the strongest regional groups associated with the IB. But one of the things we have to understand when we're looking at this is who actually will be the decision maker on whether we are IB schools or not. And that is a sole IBO decision. So, me,
IBO,
it's International Baccalaureate of Organization.
That's not TIF.
It is not TIBS. TIBS can advise us, we can consult with them, but when it comes right down to it, the IBO is who decides whether Everhart and Forest Park will be reauthorized, and the rest of these schools will become authorized. So personally, when I have a question, I don't call Austin. I call DC. Okay? So there has been some things that have come up that have been questioned. So my first call was to my contact in DC. Here's the key. You have two systems at work here in ETAA. You have the CCC and you have the IB. What people need to understand is that at the core of these, they have two different missions. CCC answers to the TEKS and Texas law. The mission and vision of the IB is the creation of a student that epitomizes the IB learner profile. And I know you've all seen these things, but we'll hit them anyway. That a person be an inquirer, that they be knowledgeable, that they be thinkers, that they be communicators, that they be principled, that they are open-minded, that they're caring, risk-takers, balanced, and reflective. That's what the IB's mission is, that when we get to the end, we have a student that epitomizes those attributes.
But isn't that also CCC? There's some.
Right.
You're gonna get to that.
Right. I'm gonna get to that. But you have to look at it this way. That is not something that any elementary school is going to do in 5 years. The IB looks at the long game. K through 12. And they're saying, we bring them in here in kindergarten, and by the time we get them out in 12th grade, they epitomize this. The CCC model is looking at it from an even longer game. Because the IB, you have to understand how it starts. I can tell you from absolute experience that a kid going into an international school in The Hague or in Switzerland or in Singapore is not like a kid that comes out of South Longview. By the time my daughter had turned 6 years old, she had been to 19 countries. Kids in South Longview are lucky if they've been to 19 cities. So I'm starting with a different product. The IB does not recognize that. The CCC recognizes that. And so what the CCC's purpose is to get those kids to the same place, but also recognize that we're bringing them from further. And so we have to expose them to all the things they need to get to here. And so we have to build a foundation for our students that already exists for students that are in those international schools. Now, what are the chances? There have been two areas that have been questioned, and I'm going to hit them right now. One is the training. There's been some back and forth over how much training the teachers need. Tibbs has offered 2 trainings a year for the last 3 years. About?
Here?
In here in Longview.
Oh, God. 6, 7.
A good deal.
Y'all been.
Tibbs has offered a good deal of training in Longview over the last 3 years. So teachers have gone to, and most teachers have gone to 3 or 4 trainings in the last 3 years. And the question is, how much training does the IB require for a teacher in a school that's being authorized or reauthorized? And the answer is? 1. Teachers, to have an authorized school, every teacher has to have gone through 1 level category 1 training up to authorization. Now the key is just you have to promise that once you become authorized, that you will continue the professional development. But to become authorized, each teacher on the campus that works with kids has to have at least 1. Same thing for administrators. In fact, administrators even get easier because you have to send people of your administrative team to training, but if the principal doesn't want to go, it says the principal or their designee. But all of our principals, correct, have gone. So at this point in the game, LISD schools, all of them, are meeting the requirement from the IBO for authorization when it comes to training. Okay? The second is the idea of having an authorization or a reauthorization or a school's authorization taken away. This is literally something that the IB, I've literally never heard of it. In fact, out of the mouth of the woman that is in charge of the PYP, Art, you know, we don't do that. Now, what will happen is this, when the team comes and you don't meet specific standards, then you will end up with what are called matters to be addressed. When I walked in at Everhart 5 years ago, they had just had a visit. And so the first thing I saw when I sat down at the principal's chair at Everhart was the report from the IBO for what Everhart had done in their visit. And they had 9 matters to address. Now, I had never seen more than 3. I was surprised. Yet, they didn't deauthorize them. They said, here's what you need to fix. And that's what they always do. Now, we are addressing the mock visit that they had and the matters to be addressed given to us by TIPS. But we have to make sure that we understand where the actual power to authorize our schools are and to reauthorize our schools. And that lies in Washington, D.C. Now, here's the kicker. When those visitation teams come, the chances of us having people from Texas doing the visitation is really, really small. So what they're gonna be looking at is the ID with the Texas picture. So we need to educate them, and we will, on this is why we're doing the ID in this particular way. Because it's all about taking the ID philosophy, incorporating it into the curriculum that you're already doing, being consistent, and trying to do it with as much fidelity as you can. And kicking back to what I said at the beginning, I am a true believer in ID. I think Mr. Murray knows that. And so I'm going to fight tooth and nail to make sure it gets done with fidelity.
And they're coming back in.
They're coming back.
Actual evaluation
October.
at JLE is in October.
And so what we're doing right now is we're looking at those matters to be addressed that were pointed out, and we're going to deal with them.
Is this matters to address that they gave us at the last visit that they came at?
The mock.
They had a mock.
Yes, sir.
Now, the matters to be addressed that they pointed to in 2016, we fixed those. But there has been, one of the hard things about public schools in general is you're looking at, the visits don't happen but every 5 years. So if you have turnover in your staff and turnover in your admin, what you end up with is people that don't keep the consistency over the years. And at Everhart, there's probably only, out of the 40 teachers that were there when I got there, there may be 6 out of the 40, and a brand new, completely new admin team. And so as they're struggling to keep this all together, they're getting hit by some of the same stuff we got hit by. But a lot of it is the Texas stuff, okay? How much agency you give your students. Now, understanding that if I don't know how many of you have seen the T-test rubric, how we evaluate teachers. But if you actually look at the T-test rubric and look at that exceptional teacher, if you get a teacher that's doing that exceptional piece over there on the edge, that is an IB teacher. And so one of the things that we have to do, really, is get our teachers moved to where they need to be, just by the Texas standard. Because it is all about, and this is IB philosophy, this is Texas Education Agency philosophy, this is CCC philosophy, that teachers need to help kids to help drive their own education. The days of sit and get are gone. And so, for us to get to where we need it in the IB, means we have to get where we need to get in the CCC and TEA. But as far as us having a chance of not getting the IB authorization or getting reauthorized, there any questions?
I just want to say, thank you, that does make quite a few things clear to me. And it looks like there's probably, congratulations on your doctorate. And it looks like there's plenty of material there for another, doctoral thesis.
That actually was what was, I started out, I almost did that, but one of my professors was like, no, you can do it over this, and she was right.
She was right.
Because I will present Dr. Coleman as soon as it's public, as soon as it's bound and everything, I'll present my dissertation to the district, because it is, it's, the effects of desegregation on African Americans, a case study of Longview ISD. And so it's Longview ISD history. And so I'll present that to the district, and it was amazing study. Longview's come a long way.
Yeah, like to see it.
And Dr. Brown, I wasn't gonna say that, but since you're saying that you're going to be presenting that study, out of all of that you just said, I must admit, one thing that didn't bother me is that you said that there are most students in South Longview, have never been to
Don't get me wrong.
12 countries or 12 cities or something along those lines. You're looking at a person who is from South Longview,
Right.
who has been all over the world.
Hey, don't get me
So
wrong.
hang on. So to make that statement, I think that you are very passionate about IB, which is good. I'm glad we have someone working on our team that is passionate about IB, that is over IB. I think that's really good, but I just don't want anyone in the future to discredit all the good stuff you said because they were offended by that one statement.
Okay, now, understand, Pastor Brown, I'm one of those South Longview kids. Okay, all right, and so, understand, believe me, I know where I come from. All right? But what I was trying to distinguish is that there is an amazing amount of difference in the privilege of the international school kid than our kids.
Who is well traveled.
Who is well traveled. Because, I mean, you're talking about, just as an example, I was teaching Egyptian history to Egyptians. Figure that. And I had a young lady that missed because the week was Sunday, Thursday. She missed every Sunday, and she missed every Thursday. And finally, after about a month or two, I asked her, what are you missing? Do you realize you missed like 40 days? Oh, my mother takes me to Europe to go shopping on her butt. We spend the weekend shopping in Europe. This is the kind of kid that you have in international school. And that gives a kid a amazingly different level of exposure to things than our kids have. So believe me, I'm not denigrating the South Side. I'm from there. My mom still lives over there. Any other questions? You didn't protect me?
I've been to 3 countries, and I'm from South.
Oh, that's
Not
South
12,
Longview.
not 12, right?
Not 12.
If there are no other questions, thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Dr. Brown, appreciate that. I'm going to close out my report by reporting to the board. I'm very pleased to report that, Commissioner Marath has approved my appointment to the Region 7 Board of Trustees. And I will be representing the charter branch of that, for lack of better terminology. And so my appointment will start June the 1st and will end May the 31st, 2022. So it's just for a year, and after that particular year, if I want to reapply, I can do that. And I would like like to, Dr. Wilcox is not here, but I would like to thank him in his absence for his vote of confidence and his nomination for me to serve, on this particular, board for the Region 7 Service Center.
Well earned. Well earned.
That's all that I have.
Dr. Coleman, do you have an update?
I would just, say, what, Dr. Brown, thank you for the history lesson on IB. That was really thorough and well done. I appreciate that. Been doing this a long time in education. Been in educational administration over 25 years, and it never fails that somebody asks me every summer, "You mean you work during the summer?" Yeah, usually that's usually when we're the busiest. We're getting things prepared, ready, planning, doing all those things. And that's what we're doing in conjunction with our partners at this time. We're trying to prepare the very best school year that's gonna be a normal school year beginning this September.
We hope.
And so we're hoping that's the way it goes. And we're gonna be prepared in case that's not the way it goes. So we're making plans on both fronts and all fronts and everything else. So trying to, work with our partners. And I know we're having to call upon your administration to come together with a lot of the other partners, taking a lot of time, a lot of meeting time that we're doing just to put the brains together so that they can utilize their expertise and come up with those best plans and show us how we can utilize the resources that we have in their system, and y'all's networks, in order to do the best thing we can for our kids. So, just wanna know if there's anything I can do to facilitate that. I'm open to it, and Dr. Wise is not bashful about picking up phone calls, so we get that taken care of. Anything I can do for you, let me know, I appreciate it.
Thank you, Dr. Brown. We can say a lot of things about Dr. Wise, bashful doesn't come.
So that concludes your report, Dr. Wise.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for that. Moving on to item 3, consent agenda, A, B, and C.
Make a motion, we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
All right, we got a motion and a second, to approve the consent agenda, items A, B, and C. Discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. All right, item 4, action agenda, A, discussion and appointment of new secretary for the East Texas Advanced Academies Board of Directors.
I would, like to make a motion, and I have not discussed it with my fellow board member, but I'd like to make a motion for Darian to be our new secretary.
No, you haven't discussed
We
it.
don't.
All right, so that's a motion.
And he would have to say yes.
And when y'all just don't know, but you over here making motions and he on the second.
Yeah, ganged up on it.
I guess so,
The
yeah.
kid on the block.
We got a motion and a second. Appointment of new secretary for the East Texas Advanced Academies. Darian Brown. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. All opposed, same sign.
I'm just gonna.
Congratulations.
Yay, me.
All right, item B, discussion and possible approval of Brownland furniture purchase.
I'll make a motion to approve, the purchase. I'd like to B, C, and D, and I'd like to have, just if we have somebody prepared to talk a little bit about what all is in this and what we're getting done.
I can share with you, very quickly, Brownland has been slowly purchasing furniture over the couple of years, filling the classrooms with flexible seating, much like what you see in the library here, just a little more designated towards the learning environment, over at Bramlett. And so that's what that furniture request is for. We'll be using transformation funds, to meet that. But it's something that Mrs. Mumford's been working on, with our department and the different, vendors to get pretty good quotes. And so we believe we got a real solid one to finish out the campus. She also has some really neat learning environments though that she wants to add as well, into some of the common areas to expand the classroom outside of the classroom, to make it a learning.
Well, and that was kind of a question. With this purchase, are we reaching the point at these campuses where I know we'll never finish adding things, but are we reaching the point at this campus where we're not, in a position where we're impacting student learning because we don't have what we need?
I think that, we're actually in a really good position in most of our campuses because of the grants that the district secured over the years, for each one of the campuses. Naturally, we came into a lot of those grants and having to work with Dr. Coleman's office and his staff, to meet those needs. But most of our campuses, truthfully, are far more innovative than many of the places throughout the state of Texas in terms of classroom environment, learning environment, and it being conducive to success for kids.
And these
So-
transformation funds, remember that this started the beginning of our 1882 journey. And we are still spending those funds, that's what's left. We have one exception in our network, is J.L. Everhart, but they haven't been a part of receiving any funding because the grant that was written this year for the magnet, we thought we were gonna get J.L. Everhart in, so they can get smart boards and innovative furniture, but, that was put on hold by the feds, I believe, or not approved, whatever it is, but we're looking to reapply next year. But all of us, as Dr. Stewart stated, all of our other campuses are in pretty good shape in terms of being innovative.
How has that affected your campus, Meg?
In terms of grants, we spent all of our grant money really focusing on instructional technology. We're one-to-one Chromebooks, we have smart boards in all of the classrooms. We're looking at using title funds to get Z-Space, which is something that you guys have seen. I think this year it's like virtual reality, we're able to, pull up a butterfly and actually see it, flapping right in front of you. We're looking at using title funds for those things. About the only thing we can't spend that we want is the furniture. So that's why we're hoping to use this grant, the transformation fund, in order to get our furniture. But in terms of instructional technology, curriculum, workbooks, textbooks, all of that has been taken care of from other grants or other funding opportunities.
How has that impacted your campus?
Oh, it's been significant. Just in terms, especially this school year, we would not have been able to do synchronous or asynchronous learning without the Chromebooks that we got last summer. Without you guys approving those Chromebooks early in like April or May, and those coming in over the summer, synchronous and asynchronous learning would have not been possible because on our campus we had 36 Chromebooks. This time last year, we had 36. And so looking at we started the year with about 250 students who are virtual. And we only would have had about 36 Chromebooks to give out. So without using those grants for instructional technology or just instruction, this school year would have been significantly harder.
So you're telling, by the time the kids were actually sent home, you were one-to-one on Chromebooks to students?
Not this time last year, but by the time they arrived to campus or were ready to pick up their Chromebook in August.
With this school year.
This past school year, we were one-to-one.
And even Gerald Everhart, it has some needs in terms of trying to catch up with the innovative
Smart
learning
boards.
environments. But they do have a version of the smart board. It's not, what we have at the other campuses, but they do have a version of it that allows them to take advantage of technology that's better than just a traditional, overhead projector. So they do have the opportunity, but.
They all have these, is that what you're talking about, the presentation cards?
They have the presentation cards, but they have like Dr. Brown Those are
remedial
a little
boards.
better, they're real Prometheus.
Also, they were.
So they do have, yeah, they have that technology, but in terms of the innovative furniture and things like that, but, they don't have as much as they have received in grants, but we did, as a network, take care of, upgrading all of their.
But they're one-to-one,
They are.
they're one-to-one, and, they have the Accelis lab.
Mhm.
We're gonna get it up and running this next school term, so they have that as well, robotics.
So, yes, sir.
So, but I urge you, from my understanding, you did say this is something Ms. Mumphrey is asking for.
Yeah, well, yes, this is one of the, she started that journey when they originally started ordering the furniture. And so as the furniture came in, they organized learning environments in the class. They knew that it would happen in phases.
Yes, okay.
Any other questions? In terms of the smart boards, you guys, they're gonna be like the ones behind us, I think even newer model actually. And so, that are on for both campuses. So, they're really good. It's a really good learning.
Yeah, I've actually seen, I got to see it before I was placed on such a prestigious board as this. I got to see some teachers actually use those, and they really are cool. And I think that, especially the science and those classes, that type of stuff right there helps out a lot. So, I'm all for that stuff there. I think that's really good.
Teachers love it.
Yeah.
Alright, so we got a motion to approve B, C, and D on the action agenda. Alright, got a motion to do that.
You don't second it? I'll second.
Alright, I've got a motion and a second to approve B, C, and D action agenda. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Alright, district report. Sure, you have anything on the board today?
Yes, sir. We'll keep it brief. Want to highlight a handful of things. Of course, like typical, we're right on schedule with spending. Things are going very well. We have cut off spending for a little bit. What it allows us to do is to take into account, all the accounts that we're not paying right now. Like, we're not going to be paying a lot of funding out of substitutes. There'll be some things that we won't be paying out of medical accounts and other accounts. But I did want to bring attention to some accounts that we have had some changes in very slightly. You'll notice in our 61s in community service, a lot of those funds are coming out of campuses doing some outreach, especially ETMPA, with their kindergarten, pre-kindergarten roundup. We know how important that is, because the more kids that we can get in at that young age, the better successful they're going to be as they go through our schooling system. And so they've done a really good job, especially with everything that's gone on with COVID, using the funds wisely to do some good community outreach. There are some other areas too, that we'd like to point out. We try to stay on time with function 11, because function 11 is where the vast majority of our staffing actually comes from, because the teachers, substitutes, all of those things that fall into that. And so, right now, because we have to pay most of our staff salaries through, August, and a very small portion, which is in that school leadership and counseling, categories, they all start a new pay, oftentimes a new pay scale, that we have to kind of calculate for in July and August, because they're longer month contracts. And so we're calculating for that right now. We're looking right on par with where we should be with our expectation for all 6100s, which is salaries that we pay for staff members. And so, I looked at that again today, and we're looking pretty good. We're looking like we're going to do very well as we finish out the year. I don't want to put any big numbers out there yet and say, hey, that's definitive. But I do feel, and in the conversations Dr. Wise and I have had, we feel pretty comfortable with us saying, well, we're in our budget, but not so close that we're not putting the needs into the classroom. Any questions about that? The other piece that we're waiting on, I've been in talks with Dr. Guidry. We are working with the optional and mandatory service costs that come with our contractual agreements every year. So that would be like an optional cost would be transportation. I doubt we'd ever not take the transportation, of course, with LSD buses. But there is a cost associated with that goes up or down each year. And so he's working on getting that to us as quickly as possible. But we've been in those talks. And in terms of what our budget may look like next year. We're rolling with the ADA that we've been receiving, and calculating that. We have a pretty good worksheet that we've worked up, that we feel pretty comfortable with, being able to stay within, the confines of the conservative budget, to start the school year with. And as we get those numbers dialed out from Dr. Guidry's office, and we start to really understand what the revenue's gonna look like in grant funding and things like that for next year, we'll put some solid numbers together and get them as quickly to you as possible, so you don't have time to look through all of that information. Similar to what we've done the other year.
Since you brought up the instructional budget, it brings me back to thinking about teachers, your, summer school.
Yes, sir.
Are we-
She told us when we got here
Oh, okay.
that, they have 4 high school, they said students working with master teachers that were paying $10 an hour to learn how to get into the profession of teaching. So that was something she did tell us earlier.
Well, thank you. Sorry I was late. I apologize to everybody for being late this time.
Your question around summer school though?
Yeah, that was basically, how did y'all work that out? Did you find enough teachers? Did you get them?
Oh, yes, sir, yeah, we have, 390 students. 194 both campuses, and we're fully staffed. We did collapse one class today because actually 2, because we had 2 teachers that needed the Montessori training. And so we had to kind of spread those kids out amongst other teachers, because I needed to make sure those 2 teachers attended the Montessori training. That'll be going on until the second week in July.
And how many students are you planning for at MPA, the Montessori campus this next year? How many students are you planning?
Planning, budget-wise.
Well, so we've worked off, so there's 2 different numbers that you get within that, because we have the ADA for pre-K. So it's kind of for ADA purposes, it's gonna be roughly somewhere in 700, 740, 755. But we're looking at somewhere, hopefully, if we go with the numbers of this year, with a slight projection, but right back at close to 1,100 again. We weren't too far off from that this year, but we wanna make sure that, I think with the outreach that we've done, for the kindergarten run, people really wanting their kids to go to school, that we're gonna see hopefully even more of an increase. But what we're gonna budget for is very similar to what we, finished the year with, because it's always better to get more. But you don't want to plan for more, and then you get
Not
nothing. Yes, because then it's hard to unravel those dollars, because once we get the principals and their budgets, that's pretty much what they're expecting to get. So we don't wanna have to go, now, of course, Dr. B would then love to get extra funding. That's it. Yes. Any other